Welcome to the Anew Hospice Volunteer Orientation. We're so glad you're here and we can't wait to get started. Over the course of this orientation presentation, you will learn about Anew as an organization, you will learn about the history and philosophy of hospice, and you will also learn about some key elements that will help you in your role as a volunteer. The mission, vision, values, and passion of Anew Hospice. Our mission is to enhance the patient's life story by creating healthcare experiences that inform, integrate, and inspire so they can live well wherever they call home. Our vision is to be Indiana's most trusted and valued partner for compassionate care delivered in the comfort of our patient's home, surrounded by those they love the most. Our core values are community, innovation, quality, optimism, and collaboration. And the passion of Anew is enhancing life and living well. My name is Camille Green. I am the Anew Hospice Volunteer Manager. And if ever there is anything you need, if you have a concern, a complaint, you just have a comment, you need something to be rearranged in your schedule, anything like that, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. You should have already received my contact information, but if you haven't, you will be receiving that shortly. If ever you feel uncomfortable speaking to me about a concern, please know that you can reach out to Melissa Burns, our business office manager, or you can also reach out to Denise Stamero, our administrator. Hospice philosophy. The goal of hospice care is to enable the patient to continue an alert, pain-free life for as long as possible, and to manage other symptoms so that the person's last days can be spent in their place of residence with quality and dignity, surrounded by family and friends. You, as a hospice volunteer, can join together with the Anew Hospice team to make this goal a reality for each of our patients. What is hospice? Hospice is for the terminally ill and focuses on quality of life through both physical, spiritual, and psychosocial needs. Hospice provides interdisciplinary, evidence-based medical care to control symptoms and pain, including emotional and spiritual support to patients and those who love them. Eligibility requires a terminal diagnosis with a prognosis of 6 months or less. The history of hospice. In 1967, Dame Cicely Saunders founded St. Christopher's Hospice. In 1974, the first hospice was founded in the United States. In 1982, Congress creates the Medicare Hospice Benefit. And today, hospice continues to grow within our community through education and reimbursement from Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance. Where is care provided? In hospice, we believe that care should be provided wherever the patient calls home. That can be their physical home or the home of a loved one or their caregiver. It can also be a long-term care facility or an assisted living. And finally, it can be a hospital, also known as GIP or general inpatient, and that utilizes hospital staff for helping with continuous pain symptom control, such as pain. Conveyance of charges for care and services. The patient should receive an explanation of the patient's financial obligation for services prior to initiation of services. They should receive a verbal and written notice of changes in the patient's payer source, coverage of services, and/or hospice charges within 15 workdays of hospice's notification of changes. They should receive information about any financial benefits to hospice when referred to an organization. The interdisciplinary team. The first person on the interdisciplinary team that we're going to go over is the medical director. They're the hospice physician, and ultimately they sign off on all care plans. The nurse provides most of the face-to-face medical care. The home health aide provides daily care for things like showers, shaving, and light housework. A social worker can help with psychosocial needs, funeral arrangements, and financial assistance. Spiritual care provides spiritual care for patients and their families, such as a chaplain. The bereavement coordinator provides grief support before and after death. And the volunteer provides support for social needs, office assistant, and respite care for families. Disease and medical conditions common to hospice. Hospice care is not just for cancer patients. Other hospice diagnoses include end-stage heart disease, end-stage pulmonary disease, end-stage renal disease, end-stage liver disease, dementia due to Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, HIV disease, and stroke and coma. Common signs and symptoms of hospice patients can include pain, fatigue, nausea and vomiting, delirium, shortness of breath, constipation, and weight loss. Many of these symptoms can be treated with medications. Morphine or other pain medications are highly utilized at the end of life. Oxygen can be used to help increase O2 sats. Laxatives for constipation. Supplementary shakes like Ensure or Boost can help with weight loss and allow for patients to receive vital vitamins and minerals without having to add more vitamins in pill form. The transition period. Signs and symptoms of the actively dying can include decreased intake of fluids and foods, sleeping more, semi or non-responsive, increased agitation, changing in respiration rates, and confusion. Pain and symptom management. Medication dosages used for hospice patients may be higher and or given more frequently than those routinely used for nursing facility patients. Hospice often uses PRN medications, so patients must be asked or assessed for nonverbal signs of pain. This allows for optimal pain and symptom control. Medications used for hospice symptom management may not be routinely used for similar symptoms in nursing facility residents. Purposely use medications due to their positive side effects. For example, morphine for shortness of breath, Haldol for nausea, Decadron for appetite stimulation. The goal of the hospice team is to initiate a quick response to any symptom that causes the resident discomfort. Hospice staff is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hospice facility staff should call when symptoms arise. Facility staff should call hospice instead of calling 911. Concepts of death, dying, and bereavement. Hospice provides support, reassurance, and information about grief, bereavement, and the dying process. Emotional and spiritual signs of approaching death include withdrawal, vision-like experiences, restlessness, decreased socialization, needing permission from loved ones to go, and saying goodbye. Physical signs of approaching death include increased amount of time sleeping, coolness of arms and legs, skin color changes, bowel and bladder incontinence, decreased urinary output, decreased appetite and thirst, may want little or no food or fluid, breathing pattern changes, congestion, and gurgling sounds with respirations. Bereavement. Our bereavement coordinator will follow up with loved ones after their passing for up to 13 months. They are also available for our staff and volunteers if they are struggling with grief of their own. Pre-bereavement can also occur, which is feeling grief for the loss before the patient has passed. Principles of grief. Grief is the normal response to loss. Grief and its pain are the results of the love or emotional investment you have in the person who died. If you did not love them and they did not make a difference in your life, you would not miss them or hurt like you do now. Grief is the price we pay for loving people who are important to us. Often, mourners try to avoid grief and its accompanying emotions because they are overwhelming and just too painful. Since grief emotions are the result of loving the person who died, the only way to avoid the pain would be to avoid or stop loving them. Think of grief as another expression of the love you have for the person. You don't want to stop loving them, so you wouldn't want to stop expressing that love in the normal, natural process of grief. Emotions experienced during grief are neither good nor bad. They just are. Although grief emotions are painful and uncomfortable, they are part of the grief process. Grief is a transition from life with the person to life without the person. The painful emotional process helps us to heal the emotional wounds of our loss. In grief, you cannot always choose or control what you feel. Emotions in grief seem to just happen to you. Although you don't choose what grief emotions you experience, you can choose how you express those emotions in your behavior or mourning. You can choose to express those emotions in either healthy or unhealthy ways. Grief emotions will be dealt with either now or later. The emotions of grief will not be ignored or avoided. They demand that you as a mourner acknowledge and express them in some way. The best outcome is when the mourner acknowledges the emotions and expresses the feelings and seeks the help and support of sympathetic, non-judgmental listeners. If grief emotions go unexpressed over a period of time, two things can happen to the mourner. He or she will either explode or implode. In an explosion of withheld emotions, the mourner can go out of control with a reaction that harms or destroys lives, friendships, marriages, families, or other people's spiritual well-being. An implosion caused by withheld emotions can bring about emotional meltdowns, or what used to be called nervous breakdowns, for the mourner, including results such as chronic depression and severe mental or emotional disorders. Grief is an individualized experience. Everyone does not grieve in the same predictable way. No two people grieve exactly alike. That is because each person's grief is shaped by the unique, one-of-a-kind, in all of the universe relationship that they had with a person who died. Although there may be common feelings or experiences that many mourners experience and express, every mourner's grief is special to him or her. Grief is not a set of predictable phrases, phases, steps, or tasks that must be completed in a specific order and by a prescribed timetable. Grief takes as long as it takes. To some degree, you will mourn the loss for the rest of your life. The difficult, exhaustive work of grief is to review the loss, to assess the impact the loss has had on your life, and to decide how best to live your life without that person. Living without the person does not mean detaching from them or letting go of the relationship. In life after loss, you still have a relationship with your loved one. It is just not the same anymore in that physical aspect of the relationship in this life has ended. You can still keep a relationship with your loved one alive on a spiritual and emotional level. You don't have to leave your loved one in the past and move on. You can take your loved one with you into the future as long as you accept that the relationship continues, but the nature of the relationship has changed. Grief will not always be like it is in the beginning. As time passes, the grief experience changes. Time does not heal all wounds, but in grief, time can allow space for the emotional wounds of loss to heal and for the heart to find hope. In the beginning, grief is all-consuming and overwhelming. Everything is a memory of your loved one and a reminder of your loss. But time allows you to have hope for and healing in your future. As you take on the task of grief work and you progress through grief, the bad emotional days happen less and further apart. In the future, your grief will not be like it is right now. You will still grieve, but your grief will be different. Maybe not better, just different than it is right now. There can be hope and healing in your grief journey with healthy decisions. And that was written by Larry M. Barber. Psychosocial needs at the end of life. Socialization. Some of our patients are very isolated due to estrangement or living in a facility without many visitors. Spiritual. Some patients can no longer read, further separating them from reading religious texts like the Bible. Closure. Patients may need to talk about things to work out issues in the past or may feel like they need other forms of closure. This is a great opportunity to help with something like a legacy project, letters to family, putting together music for family, journaling, etc. How can you as a volunteer help? Volunteers can be utilized to help with various aspects of hospice care. Direct, non-clinical care, including providing companionship, compassionate touch, and respite to help with caregiver burnout. Office work, including organizing files, making binders, and assisting office staff with duties. Bereavement, helping our bereavement coordinator with mailings and follow-up calls. Vigil, providing a presence for patients who may be alone while actively dying. And if you have any other special talents, such as playing music or singing for your patient, making blankets, or pet therapy, those can also be utilized to help our patients feel at comfort at the end of their time. What can you do during a visit? Things you can do during a visit with a patient include reading to them, playing games including puzzles, cards, crosswords, assist with writing letters, play music, hand massages with lotion, or just be an active listener. It's important to note that the activities and the things that you can do during a visit depend on the patient and where they are in their hospice journey, as well as how their diagnosis is affecting them both physically and emotionally. We want to meet the patient where they are. Things volunteers cannot do include providing transportation for patients, help with feeding, transferring patients between chairs, bed, or commode. And the rule of thumb with this is any hands-on help should be reserved for staff or family. We want to keep both you and your patient safe. Volunteer requirements. Our orientation process includes an application and reference check, a background check, including a motor vehicle check, commitment of an hour per week if making patient visits, regularly checking in with the volunteer manager with any issues or missed visits, completing an annual education maintaining things like TB tests and any other paperwork that has to be annually signed and reviewed, a COVID-19 vaccination or exemption, completing the volunteer orientation, and a caring heart for patients and their families. Volunteer boundaries and stress management. It's important to take care of yourself first. You won't be able to take care of others if you yourself are not in a good place. Ask for support when you need it. Come to me, the volunteer manager, anytime you need something or you're feeling overwhelmed, and I can help you rearrange your schedule with our patients or take a step back if that is what is needed. Create boundaries for yourself and your patient and their families. Find ways to de-stress, including coloring, listening to music, reading, or engaging in an activity that you find to give you spiritual comfort. Anything that helps you calm down or gives you some sort of rest and relaxation. Your volunteer manager is here to support you. Always reach out if you need help. Maintaining different boundaries. Physical boundaries include respect a person's physical space and be sensitive to cultural difference. Personal boundaries. Meet the patient where they are. Do not try to pry for information. Use good judgment when revealing personal information about yourself. And spiritual boundaries include respect an individual's spiritual beliefs and be non-judgmental. Ethical boundaries. If a patient or family offers you a gift or money, decline politely, stating that it is against company policy. Many people feel the need to compensate for your time or gifts. Reassure them that they are the gift and you are there as a volunteer, not for compensation. Refrain from assisting with financial duties or handling money. And finally, refrain from assisting with any legal documents. Handling of patient and customer complaints. Stay calm. Allow the customer to tell their story. Keep in mind the issue is not personal. He or she isn't attacking you directly, but rather the situation. Listen well. Let the customer, patient, family member, facility staff blow off steam. As you continue to remain calm, the customer should start to calm down as well. Acknowledge the problem. Get the facts. Ask questions now that the customer is calm. Let the customer know you will follow up with your supervisor. Inform your supervisor immediately. Formal complaint and grievance process. Staff member receiving complaint will inform supervisor within 5 days of receipt. Supervisor will investigate the grievance within 5 days of receipt and will make every effort to resolve. Response to the patient regarding the complaint will occur within 10 days of receipt. If patient feels the grievance has not been resolved, the following hotlines will be provided: Anew Compliance, Indiana Department of Health, ACHC, Medicare Beneficiary. Complaints and actions taken will be documented on a complaint form and tracking log. The QAPI committee will review patient grievance trends on a quarterly basis. For you as a volunteer, the most important thing for you to remember is to listen to the volunteer well, stay calm, acknowledge the problem, and then once you have gotten all of the information you can from the patient, you would forward that information on to myself. And then I will work with the clinicians and the clinical director to determine the next steps. We will go through the complaint and grievance process together. HIPAA and confidentiality. HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, a federal law that protects the privacy of a patient's personal and health information and provides guidelines for the electronic and physical security of person and health information. HIPAA calls for severe civil and criminal penalties for noncompliance, including fines and/or imprisonment for disclosing private health information or obtaining private health information under false pretenses. Fines up to $250,000 and/or imprisonment up to 10 years for knowingly misusing individually identifiable health information. HIPAA and volunteers. It is important to keep patient information confidential. Please refrain from talking about patients with people who do not work with Anew. You should never send information about a patient, including their name or initials, through email unless both parties have secure email systems. If email is being used, please refer to them as my patient. Facilities will often let you use their fax machine to send notes. You can mail or email a note page without any identifiers on it. Patient information should never be sent via text message, including name or initials. Thank you for joining Anew Hospice as a volunteer. We are so excited to have you on the team. Please watch the next video to continue your volunteer orientation or annual education requirements.